Hello Fringers! In this video I'm going to show you how to use my breakaway crochet techniques to work this cube tote. The free written pattern for this project is available from my Ravelry pattern store. In this video I will focus on specific concepts that might be hard to understand by reading the pattern alone. I should also say before I start this tutorial that any El Cheapo acrylic 3-weight yarn is ideal for this project. In the written pattern, I have specified to use 2 strands of acrylic held together and to use a slightly undersized hook. The end result is that we end up with a sturdy tote that doesn't stretch too much and holds its shape well. In this tutorial, I will be guiding you through all the techniques and sequences you need to know for making this tote. But for the sake of clarity, I'm making one small change from the written pattern. Instead of holding the yarn double, for this tutorial, I'm only going to use 1 strand of 3-weight acrylic and a 3.75mm hook. Of course, this means that the tote I'm making here will be much smaller, but it makes it easier for me to fit things into my camera shot. Other than that, everything else will be just like the written pattern. So let's have a closer look at how we will go about making this project. This tote is made up of a mini round motif, which I'm calling a mini wheel. Looking at a single mini wheel, it is basically the equivalent of 8 single crochets worked around the center ring. If we work a series of these mini wheels in a specific order or sequence, and use my breakaway crochet techniques, then we will be able to work all the mini wheels in the tote continuously and joined as you go. So don't worry if all this doesn't make sense to you right now. I will be breaking things down into much smaller steps and explaining things in plain English as each new concept comes to hand. So let's get started with the very first mini wheel. So each time we want to make a new mini wheel, we start with a floating single crochet. Now, floating single crochet is a breakaway crochet stitch, and to make one, we actually go straight into making a floating ring. Now, to make a floating ring, start with a yarn over, kind of hold on to the top here to make sure things don't slide around, and pinch the yarn close to the hook. Do another yarn over and draw this new yarn in with what we're already pinching. So here we have 2 pinched loops. Finish the floating ring by doing another yarn over and pulling through the 2 pinched loops. And those 2 pinched loops here are the center ring of our little mini motif. That is where we will be working all our stitches. It stands in for a magic circle or a chain 4 slip stitch that you might already be used to. Instead, we're doing a floating ring. Okay, so that's the floating ring part of our floating single crochet. Let's finish off the single crochet part. And to do that, just another yarn over, pull through 2, and there is our floating single crochet. Let's continue our mini motif by working 3 more single crochets into both of these loops that are the center ring, or the floating ring. There we go, just carry on like normal. 3 more single crochets. And now we've actually reached the breakaway point for this little mini motif. And what that means is it's time now to move on to a new mini wheel. that helps us work these little mini wheels continuously, and that is part of our sequence for a foundation row. Okay, so let's start a brand new mini wheel. Again, we start with a floating single crochet, which starts with the floating ring. So yarn over a pinch, yarn over a pinch, yarn over, pull through 2 to make the floating ring, yarn over, pull through 2 makes the single crochet. Work 3 more single crochets into the floating ring, and again now we have reached the breakaway point. Now in essence we just work halfway around each little mini motif before we move on to the next one. So this is the sequence I'd like you to do. I'm going to go on and finish up 6 more of these partially made mini wheels for a total of 8. Go. We've got 8 mini wheels established, and at this point I would like you to mark the last one we made. And the stitch marker, it doesn't matter where, it's more important that we mark which wheel we have, not so much what stitch. I'll just get a stitch marker in, and this is going to serve, these 8 mini wheels are what I'm calling a spine. And they will sit up along the side of the bag, and they kind of get consumed as we go around. That makes absolutely no sense to you right now, so don't worry about it. I just wanted to just point out that what this future function is for these 8 little mini wheels. Okay, now let's go ahead. We're going to continue on and make 8 more mini wheels, just like we've done for these ones here. Here we go, 8 more mini wheels started, so that gives us a total of 16 mini wheels. Okay, so what's going to happen now is we're going to work on the second section as described in the pattern of the tote. So what happens now is we are going to be working over just these 8 mini wheels in rows. We're going to build rows up, and these rows will form the base of the tote. So if I can show you here, I'll just turn it upside down. We are working on the square bottom of the tote, and these, again, these spine mini wheels, they will be traveling up the sides of the bag. And again, I'll show you how that works later. But for now, let's just concern ourselves with working some more on the base. So we've just done a foundation row, which has established 8 mini wheels. Now it's time for a return row where we come back and finish off all but the last one here. And again, don't turn your work in this project. We are never ever going to turn the work. We just continue around the current motif and work our way back from right to left. Okay, so to do a return row, we will be using what I'm calling in the pattern, the return pattern. So return pattern just means that we are going to be working 4 single crochets into the next little mini wheel. In this case, it's the one we're already on. And to close off this mini wheel, slip stitch between it and the next one around the kind of connecting strands between the two. So just dip your hook down and work a slip stitch. I'm kind of giving it a little extra tug on these to help define the wheels a little bit better because they're so small. Okay, so that's that mini wheel done. Let's go on to the next one and finish it off in the return pattern. Remember, that's 4 single crochets. And a slip stitch between. Alright, so just continue in that return pattern until you get to one before the stitch marker. So I'm going to stop here on this one. So that means you end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these mini wheels finished coming back this way. In the last mini wheel before the marked one, we only work 2 more single crochets, so we're not finishing off this last one here. There we go. So that is, for now, the return row finished on the base of the bag. Now, what goes on now is we are going to work another foundation row, but this time as we make each mini wheel, we need to join it to the one below. Okay, so let's get that started. And to start every foundation row from now on, again, we start with a floating single crochet and just 1 more single crochet in that very first mini wheel. And we go on to the next one. So, floating single crochet, oops. And because this is a joined row, we just do 1 more single crochet. And now we need to join this wheel to the one below, which will be this one here. Now in the pattern, I describe where to put a slip stitch by counting the stitches behind the hook. So we are counting back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and slip stitching into the 9th stitch behind the hook. And so just insert the hook, bring everything to the left, and draw through a loop to make that slip stitch. And again, I'm kind of tugging these slip stitches a little bit to tighten them up, just to improve the appearance. Okay, so we're a quarter of the way around this little mini wheel. We need to be halfway around. So just work 2 more single crochets into it, and that there is our foundation pattern, I'm calling. So whenever you see foundation pattern, that's what you do. Let's go through that one more time. For the foundation pattern, start with a floating single crochet, single crochet, join into the 9th stitch behind the hook, and actually in time you can begin to eyeball it. It should look like the top stitch, or the top of the most rounded part of the motif below. Alright, slip stitch and 2 more single crochets. And move on to the next one. Alright, so I'm going to just continue that foundation pattern off camera until I get to the end of the row. And there we are, 8 mini wheels established, 7 that have 4 single crochets, and of course that one in the beginning only has 2. And again, now we're ready for a return row, and that is just like we did before. We do the return pattern in the first 7 mini wheels and end with just 2 single crochets in the last one. So 4 single crochet slip stitch, 4 single crochet slip stitch, etc. End with 2 single crochets in the next stitch or mini wheel. And that's that return row finished. And remember those first 8 mini wheels we started? We're totally ignoring those for now as we work the base. So don't worry with that hanging off there. That's what's supposed to be happening. And for now, we need to work the rest of the rows for the base. Now the base is going to be 8 mini wheels wide by 8 mini wheels high. So we've got 6 more rows to do, just like we did these last 2 here. All right. And as the famous expression goes, here's one I prepared earlier. So this is what your work should look like at the end of the second section, which is the base of the bag. There's our 8 spine mini wheels here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've ended with just 2 single crochets again in this last mini wheel. And as you notice, this edge has mini wheels that are not finished. So that is the next job. So we just pivot around and finish these off, and that's basically pretty much like a return row where we're working the return pattern along all these motifs here. Just working the last mini wheel that has 4 single crochets in. Slip stitch between, and in that very last mini wheel it already has 6 single crochets. To finish it off we only need 2 more single crochets into it, and again we're going to finish this one off with a slip stitch between it and the marked mini wheel. And here we go, that's our base of the bag finished. And the next section involves the sides. Now we're going to build the sides up by doing rows that go all the way around this base square. And again, we will start with a joined foundation row, where we join all the new motifs all the way around, and then do a return row and come back all the way around the other way. And this is where we finally learn how to deal with these spine mini wheels. Okay, so the spine mini wheels, they kind of give us a head start on each row of the sides. Okay, so each time we start a new row, we're going to kind of incorporate the next mini wheel into that row. So to do that, instead of having to make a whole new mini wheel starting with a floating single crochet, well, all that's already done. So let's just continue around the marked mini wheel here with 2 more single crochets. And now we just continue with the foundation pattern along the side here. Just like we did for the base. I'm just working on this last one on this side of the base. And now just turn the corner and work down the other way. And I guess the only point I should make is after this last one on this side, we're going to join in the same mini wheel here. I think in the pattern I said I've changed the number of stitches behind the hook for joining. So I've done the floating single crochet in the first single crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 this time. It's a little bit different. But really, again, each time, if you just eyeball the top of the motif, you don't really have to count how many stitches behind the hook. Okay. And because this was joined in the corner, we're going to have kind of a little triangle in there. That's the only place that's going to happen. As everywhere else there's a diamond. But don't be worried if there's kind of a little triangle shape in the corner there. Actually, that helps you to find the corner if you ever need to. Okay, and then just continue in foundation pattern along this side, turn the corner just like we did. Alright, so you don't need to see that. I'll go ahead and work all the way around in foundation pattern until this last one here. There we are. Now let's work this last one here and go over how to end this joined foundation row for the sides. Okay, so first of all, make sure you recognize which actually is the last mini wheel of the row. It's always going to be one before the marked one. So let's put one more, or start one more mini wheel above that last one here. And just before we move on, if you would like to check your work just to make sure you've added all the right numbers, if you count the marked mini wheel as the first one, you should of course have 32 mini wheels started at this point. Now one more little job to end this row. Instead of just turning around and doing a return row, let's hook up this mini wheel to the one that sits on the spine. Okay? So we're just going to count back until we get to pretty much that second stitch on the marked mini wheel. Okay, slip stitch in there. And that's joined the first mini wheel to the last one. You know, if we were working in the round, that would be have to be joined up. So we've just kind of done that in our own way here. Okay, so that's the first foundation row of the sides done. Time for the return row. We're going to head back around the other way, all the way back again to the marked mini wheel. Nothing fancy here, just work in return pattern through each little mini wheel, and I'll join you when I get back to the marked wheel here. So here I am, just about ready to do the last return pattern in that last mini wheel before the marked one. And now that I'm back at the marked mini wheel, again it already has 6 single crochets. I need to finish it off now by putting 2 more into it and close it off with a slip stitch between it and the next spine mini wheel. There we go, and that is that first two rows, I should say, a foundation and a join and a return row of the sides, and you can see things are starting to kind of cup up a little bit. That's exactly what we want. Okay, so this first row of mini wheels is slightly different because it's kind of a transition between the base and the sides. So from now on, as you work around, we don't have to worry about doing anything special in the corners. Just think of it as one long row that just happens to kind of curve. Okay. All right, and so really, in a nutshell, what you will be doing from now on to finish off the sides, the first thing you need to do is move the marker. So take the stitch marker out, and we're going to swap it up into the next spine mini wheel. Very important to do that. It helps us navigate. So I've moved the stitch marker. We begin from now on at these rows with 2 more single crochets into the marked mini wheel. Work in foundation pattern all the way around. When you get back to the marked mini wheel, connect it up. Remember how we end the row by slip stitching into that to join the row up. Come back with return pattern, and then work 2 more single crochets into the marked mini wheel. And close off the last mini wheel with a slip stitch between the marked mini wheel and the next spine. There is the second row of the sides I've gone ahead and done for you. So just continue that until you get to the end of the last foundation row. So this should be on the 8th row of motifs. We've just slip stitched into the marked mini wheel of the spine, and this is where things start to get really interesting. We are going to now start the return row, but at the same time we're going to incorporate the handles into this process. So we're going to work a little ways and then do the handle, build up the handle rows, come back down and carry on. So it's really more a matter of navigating. In other words, we're still going to be doing foundation pattern and return pattern, but we are going to not be going all the way around. We'll be stopping short to do a little section and then carry on. Kind of like doing, if you do any knitting or sock knitting, sock rows. So don't get confused at how I folded the bag here. That's the base here. So to start this return row, begin by doing the return pattern over the next 6 mini wheels. And in the next mini wheel, just 2 single crochets, because that is where we break away to the next row of the handle. So we will jump up to the next row by doing a floating single crochet and a single crochet, and then work in foundation pattern over the next 5 mini wheels. For the return row, work in return pattern over 4 mini wheels. In this mini wheel here, the 5th one, just work 2 single crochets. breaking away now up to the next row. It's again a floating single crochet, foundation pattern in the next 3 mini wheels. For the next return row, work in return pattern over 2 mini wheels, so return pattern twice, and then 2 single crochets in the next mini wheel. And breaking away to the next row, again we have a floating single crochet, and just the foundation pattern once. And now we're going to do a real quick return row here, but we're going to, for now, carry on and finish off these little mini wheels on this edge. So in other words, we're going to leave the handle as is for now and move on and continue along the top edge of the bag. So I'll just go over that because things are slightly different when we finish the left edge. Again, start off with the return pattern to finish this last mini wheel. And now let's just do 2 more single crochets out of habit here. Okay, and now let's go along and finish up. We've got this one, this, and this. These mini wheels need to be finished up before we go on. And really, if you can suss out how many single crochets these mini wheels already have, you know how many to add on. So this already has 4. We need 8, so just slot in 4 more there. And we're always doing a slip stitch between each motif. Now these are not lying straight in a row, but you can see here where the division is between this one and the next. So just slip stitch there, and looks like we just need 2 more in this mini wheel. Slip stitch, 6 single crochets in this one, slip stitch, just 2 more in the next one, slip stitch, 6 more in the next, slip stitch, and 2 more in this last one here, which is pretty much even with the top edge of the bag. So there's our work so far. And now it's just a matter of just working a bit further along the top edge here. So the next step is to work in return pattern 15 times, which will get us to the beginning of the next handle. And after the 15th return pattern in the next mini wheel, just do 2 single crochets, because now we're going to start jumping up to the next row of the handle. So I've just sort of folded the bag in half, and you can compare where we are to the other side. Here's where we left off, and we're going to work the next handle section just like we did before. So there's nothing new here. So when we get to the top here, we have a return row and just finish with 2 single crochets here, because we're going to actually add on some more rows of just 2 motifs to kind of fill out the length of the handle. Now I'll go ahead and work up to this point here, and then we'll work the rest of the handle. Alright, so we've gotten to the top of this triangle kind of portion of the handle. Now before we went ahead and finished this left edge, but instead, like I said, we need to keep going. We're going to build up the handle with these 2 mini wheels repeated. So what you basically need to do is repeat these last 2 rows 5 more times. In other words, you've got a floating single crochet, foundation pattern once, return pattern once, and then 2 single crochets in the last mini wheel. So do that 5 more times. So that gives you in total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows of just the 2 mini wheels. At this point, we're going to add just 1 more foundation row. And I'd like you to place a marker in that last stitch. That's going to help us join the handles up in a minute. So don't forget that step there. Now, in true breakaway crochet fashion, we're going to leave all this unfinished on this left side of the handle. And we're actually going to start doing the edging. And this edging is just basically kind of a chain stitch edging that goes along all the edges here. And we're also going to be working kind of backwards. So we're going to start here and work this way. Normally if you were just working in a normal stitch, you would be working from right to left. But we're going to do it the breakaway crochet way. That just helps us navigate. It gets us where we need to go. And it shouldn't be anything too unusual or something you haven't done before. Okay, so from this point on, to start the edging, we've got 2 chains. And all we're doing here is basically, again, just finding the top of the mini wheel behind the hook and slip stitching into it. I've got in the pattern how to count back. I forgot how many stitches that was, but I can show you here how to eyeball it. Just continue that with chain 2, find that top stitch of the next mini wheel, and continue along this long edge of the handle here where we've just got 2 mini wheels per row. And now that I'm about ready to go and hook into these 2 mini wheels that kind of are poking out a bit more than the others, things are going to be slightly different there. So continue with the chain 2. And we're going to do 2 slip stitches right together at the top of these 2 wheels. So if you find these ones that poke out, just skip 2 stitches, do a slip stitch into the next stitch, and again we're doing the backwards kind of breakaway slip stitch. So there's 1, do 1 more in the next stitch, and that kind of covers the top of that mini wheel a bit more evenly. Chain 2 and repeat that in the next mini wheel. Skip 2 stitches, slip stitch in the next 2, chain 2, and continue by just slip stitching in the top of each mini wheel along the edge until you get to the other handle. Okay, and now we're back to these 2 here that kind of poke out. Again, after the slip stitch, it's chain 2, skip 2, and then 2 slip stitch into these 2 ones that poke out. Okay, after those ones that poke out, continue with chain 2 and a slip stitch into really the side of this next one here. So just skip 1 stitch this time and go into that second stitch. Chain 2, and now we've got a big deal here where we are going to join the other end of the handle to the one we're on now. Okay, so that's why I asked you to put that stitch marker in, because that makes it easy to find. Do a slip stitch into where that stitch marker is. And I'm going to take that out right now because that's really going to be in my way. Okay. And also notice that, you know, we left these 2 mini wheels unfinished. So that's the next job. After that slip stitch, do 2 more single crochets, and we're going to go behind the hook, find that next mini wheel, slip stitch into the top of it to join those 2 mini wheels. Come back to our same mini wheel, put 2 more single crochets, and slip stitch between it and the next one. Let's move on to the next mini wheel, 2 more single crochets. And again, we're going to go behind the hook to find the other unjoined mini wheel from the other side of the handle. Just skip 1 stitch, go into the next and slip stitch. And there's our handle joined. And the next operation then is to just go back down the other side of the handle. It's time now to finish off all these motifs on the edge and continue along the rest of the top edge of the bag. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. We just do return row along here. And remember, when we get to this section here, just look and see how many each mini wheel lacks and add those in and slip stitch between each one. And of course, return pattern along the edge and slip stitching into our last marked mini wheel. Now I'm going to work all of that and meet you here, and then we will have the other side of the edging to do. So there, I've made my way all the way around, and I should be ending up back at the marked, that first spine mini wheel. I should have said you end with 2 single crochets and a slip stitch into the next stitch to finish that up. Again, the very beginning yarn tail is there, so that's another breakaway kind of element or characteristic where you always end where you begin. Okay, so I'm going to try to fold this so you can see what's going on here and what your work should look like so far. Now remember, we've already done the edging on this side, so that's the next job. So let's turn it around this way. The edging on this side is just the same. It's basically just the 2 chains and slip stitch into the top of your mini wheels. And of course, when you get these ones that poke out, you've got 2 slip stitches into the top 2 stitches. So just work, and again, and this time you can go forwards like you normally do from right to left. So working along all the way around this big hole here. Just go all the way around, and again, you'll end up exactly where we've started. Just doing the very last stitch here, which is kind of congested because there's already a couple of slip stitches there. Oh, let me go in here. There we go. That'll do. Okay. And that's it. Hot off the hook. Completely finished, all in one piece. We only have this last yarn tail and the beginning one to sew in, provided you used only one length of yarn. There's our mini bag done. You can see it's pretty stable as well, even though I only used one length of yarn and a smaller hook than normal for a 3-weight yarn. And I weighed this, and it weighs exactly 50 grams. So if you're going to do the mini version like this, I would definitely want to have probably a 100-gram ball of yarn on hand, or you'll be playing some pretty serious yarn chicken. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this project. Please write in if you have any questions or need help with anything, or you can join my Breakaway Crochet chat and support group on Facebook. The details are in the description. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.